I'll wait for you, Rob. We're good. Excellent. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councillor Mackey.
We're good. Excellent. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councillor Mackey.
Present.
Councillor Gamble. Councillor Burley.
Excellent. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councillor Mackey.
Present.
Okay. Councillor Burley.
Present.
Councillor Carlton. Councillor McLean, sorry, Councillor McQueen will be joining us in a few moments. Councillor Desai.
Present.
Councillor Patterson. Warden Hicks.
Here.
Councillor Clumpus. Councillor Keaveney. Councillor Body. Councillor O'Leary.
Present.
Councillor Woodbury.
Present.
Councillor Milne.
Present.
Councillor Soever.
Present.
Councillor Bourdignon.
Present.
Councillor Robinson.
Present.
Councillor Hutchinson.
Present.
We have all members in attendance with the exception of Councillor McQueen.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We'll turn next to the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, and culture of the Anishinaabe, the 6 nations of the Grand River, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat, Wyandot peoples on whose traditional territories we gather and whose ancestors signed treaties with our ancestors. We recognize also the Métis and the Inuit, whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with peace, in peace and friendship with all of its diverse peoples. Council, is there any declaration of interest, pecuniary or other? Seeing none, I will simply say that if one does come up during the course of the meeting, I would ask you to declare it at that time. All right, item number 6 is adoption of minutes. Item 6A is County Council and Committee of the Whole minutes dated July 14th, 2022. I'm looking for a mover to put it on the floor. Moved by Councillor Burley, seconded by Councillor Robinson. Is there any discussion? And I'll call the question. All those in favor? Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. Item 6B is the Long-Term Care Committee of Management minutes, which are dated July 12th, 2022. Moved by Councillor Woodbury, seconded by Councillor Hutchison. Any discussion there? I call the question then. All those in favor? Is there anyone opposed? That is carried. Thank you. We do not have closed meeting matters. Now on to number 8, the Public Health Grey Bruce Board of Health minutes dated May 27th, 2022. Moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor O'Leary. Dr. Zayed is here, I believe. Will you be speaking to the minutes?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to provide the Grey Bruce Health Unit update on the minutes for the Board of Health. I will provide an update on 3 items: COVID-19 and monkeypox virus, opioid drug overdose crisis, and vaping regulation submission to Health Canada.
It appears that Dr. Zayed is muted.
Oh,
there we go.
sorry. The provincial key metrics in relation to COVID-19 that is provided by the Ministry of Health every 2 weeks through a scorecard showed the situation right now. In terms of cases, there is 14-day decrease or no change in cases for the 7-day average. The deaths, there is also a 14-day decrease or no change with a 7-day average daily new death is 9 and 80% increase in 7-day average versus the 2 weeks ago. The positivity, there is 7% increase versus 2 weeks ago. The outbreak is 8% decrease, and the hospitalization show 54% increase. The ICU admission 30% increase. However, if we compare Ontario versus the global aspect, we find that the situation is a slightly increase overall, but not as much compared to other countries. In terms of the health units, or in Ontario, if we go into more details, 13 public health units that showed hotspots, which meaning significant increase of more than 200 new cases cluster in the last week. So Grey Bruce Health Unit is not among those health units. In terms of the average weekly doses for Grey Bruce Health Unit, there is a slight increase, but not above 10 per day. And again, there is this slight increase is not really profiled on or reflected on the severity or the mortality. In terms of the number of cases in general as a heat map or a positivity, we find that compared to the weeks before, there is no much increase in positivity that requires any change in the public health restrictions. That's with regard to the disease itself. So overall, we are in a good shape, and we are there is no sort of scaling up for infection control. In terms of COVID vaccine, currently we are providing at least a weekly vaccine clinic through the community centers across the board in Grey Bruce. We also provide vaccine by partnering with pharmacies and primary care. We focus on the low coverage areas and applying various strategies to meet the various contents of vaccine acceptance. We partner with the Ministry of Health to provide mobile and indoor clinics, in addition to the clinic that the public health unit is providing. We're working on engaging the primary care for vaccine delivery for children below 5 years, which will be available in the next few days. In addition to that, we have a full preparedness plan for vaccine, for COVID response and communication strategy. That's with regard to COVID pandemic and COVID vaccine and preparedness. With regard to monkeypox, we had one case 2 weeks ago, and the situation, the person already recovered and off isolation, and the acquisition event was in Toronto, and there is no other contacts. Education to high priority population is ongoing, and we provided a vaccine clinic for prophylaxis for a certain group. In terms of the opioid situation, we have a COMO subgroup that work on opioid prevention and identified 9 priorities for the provincial action. In addition to that, there is a prevention subgroup committees from that work group. First, regarding the 9 priorities that was also included in the Alpha resolution that was moved by Alpha and the Como executive. The main 9 priorities include a multi-sectoral task force, including people with lived experience, expand the access to harm reduction program and practice, ensure sustainability of support for substance use prevention and mental health promotion initiative, expand the collection, analysis, reporting of timely integrated epidemiological data, expand the access to treatment of opioid use disorder, address the structural stigma, discrimination, and related harms, advocate to and support the federal government to decriminalize personal use and possession of substances, and paired with increased investment in health and social services, acknowledge and address socioeconomic determinants of health, systemic racism, and their intersection that are risk factor for substance use, providing funding and other support to enable consistent community leadership by people who use drugs and by community organization. These are the 9 priorities that were adopted for the public health action. The work of the subgroup include a standing committee for 1-year period and will be reassessed at the end of the year. It is a partnership between local public health and Public Health Ontario. The committee is created to support public health unit work and prevent substance-related harms with a focus on evidence-based childhood and youth intervention. Co-chaired by Grey Bruce Health Unit and Public Health Ontario, and membership of 10 health units, including Toronto Public Health, Waterloo, Peterborough Public Health, Kingston, Southwestern Public Health, Simcoe Muskoka, Brant County, York Region, and Porcupine Health Unit. So there is a variation of the expertise and experiences which will enrich the work across this work for the intervention of geared toward prevention. The main objective is understanding the evidence-based intervention for preventing substance use among youth and mitigating adverse childhood experiences. The second, understand evidence-based integrated social determinants of health and address the impact of structural discrimination, describe the local programming in Ontario, and develop a logic model or framework to map out areas of coverage and gaps for intervention and consider overlap with mental health promotion. These are the main objective of this work group or subgroup committee. The deliverables is focused on 3 deliverables this year. Develop an environmental scan for early child and youth programs mapped to evidence of effectiveness on substance use outcome, given that we have many overlapping and many services. So this environmental scan would be really very important. Develop a data summary and knowledge exchange on the current epidemiology, and that include analysis of the COMPASS data, consider data from Public Health Unit, and consider analysis of data from Ontario Drug Policy and Research Network and the Office of the Chief Coroner. And the third objective is related to a grant proposal for conceptual framework. And this conceptual framework, we have now currently a grant that we are working on with the CIHR. What we will benefit from this provincial group, it will benefit the local context in terms of human health prevention across the lifespan project or matrix project that is implemented or planned and implemented in Grey Bruce Health Unit as an important strategic goal and direction. People with lived experience, we need to have more insight on and engagement for people with lived experience, evidence-based intervention for the current projects, and the partnership to focus on efficiency and streamlining intervention, in addition to evaluation and identifying areas of positive assets and areas of learning and improvement across Grey Bruce. So that's the update for the opioid, and the last update is related to endorsing the proposed regulation. There was regulation related to vaping, and these proposed regulation were described as a first approach to introduce vaping product reporting requirement and ensure that the government, non-informed of vapor product industry practices, is important to support the effort of health, and vapor product manufacturers should be held to the same standard of accountability and scrutiny as tobacco product manufacturer through the enactment of proposed regulation, and which include reporting on vaping product sales and information on sales of vaping products by brand sold in Canada and for export, and reporting on ingredient information on the ingredient of vaping substance by is very important, the same way as there was regulation for the tobacco. So that was the summary of my update. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Zayed. Councillor and Chair Patterson, is there anything you wish to add?
Thank you, Warden Hicks, and good morning, County Council. Yes, I have three highlights to share. The board has a brief 5-minute educational update at each meeting. And at this meeting, we reviewed the roles and responsibilities of a public health manager. I find these educational notes to be very informative, and they give board members a better understanding of the programs and services that are provided by the health unit. The board also finalized the orientation package and discussed the length of the county appointments to the board. It was recommended that board members be appointed for a 2-year term rather than 1 year. And I do want to point out that this is a recommendation and not a requirement. The board also approved the 1% mandatory programs-based funding increase granted by the Ministry of Health. Mandatory programs are cost shared between the Ministry of Health and Grey and Bruce counties. It is a 70-30 split. So to be eligible to keep the additional funding from the ministry, Grey and Bruce counties would have to match the 1% increase. The total contributions between the counties would increase by $27,000, with Grey's share being just under $16,000, and Bruce County's share would be $11,000. And this motion was approved by the Board of Health. And that's the update. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Soever, you have a question.
Yes, certainly. One of the things that I've been watching is the COVID and wastewater in Ontario, and it's going up, not as fast as it was a few weeks ago, but it's still on the rise. Now, I know that we do take samples at our Craigleith wastewater treatment plant as well. Where can one access that data for the COVID from the local area? I know a lot of health units have that data posted, but I couldn't find it here.
Thank you, Mayor Sover, for your question. Actually, this data for us is available and integrated by the data analyst. But unfortunately, the data is very confounded and skewed data that is not helpful because we only have 16% of gray bruce depending on the municipal water, which is a very small percentage. In addition, that there are many confounding factors with this data. For example, people who are not residing in Owen Sound but comes to work. So there is discrepancy between the weekend and the weekdays, morning and night. There is a spike, and this spike is not helpful that compared to other health units like Ottawa, for example, where they rely on more than 95% on municipal water. So this spike is just going up one day and down the next day. So it doesn't really inform us with data that is helpful to have a trend, to try to discern a trend from this data. So far it's not helpful, but we are trying to see other ways. The last conversation was to try to get only one sample per week, which is a Monday. And still yesterday, the data analyst told me that still there is issues with the confounding factors with this data. So we are relying on what it matters, and we don't want to confuse the public with data that's not reliable.
Okay, thank you. So you mentioned Ottawa. Ottawa seems to be a hot spot lately in terms of their hospitalizations and their wastewater and everything else, particularly yesterday's wastewater symbol. Now the AMO conference is being held in Ottawa this year in a couple of weeks. Do you have any recommendations on going to this super spreader event?
It's again using mask, keeping distance, washing hands, and the golden rule is stay at home if sick, but for others, but anyway, keeping the distance and wearing the mask mostly all the time is important in gatherings, and keep safe.
Thank you.
Are you finished, Councillor Swever?
Yes.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, then it's perhaps time to call the question. All those in favor of the report? Anyone opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much, and thank you, Dr. Zayed.
Thank you.
Okay, we have one bylaw at number 9. It's with respect to road 19 and 21, the roundabout there in the town of the Blue Mountains. I need a mover to put the item on the floor. Moved by Councillor Milne, seconded by Councillor Bordignon. Any discussion on that bylaw? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that too is carried. Onwards now to good news and celebrations. Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Warden Hicks. I'm happy to report that this past weekend, the Rotaract Highlanders had their annual cruise night. They last had it in 2019 and then missed 2 years due to COVID. It was a great turnout. Hundreds of cars lined up down Main Street. And at the end of that, the Rotaract Highlanders generated $2,404.07 in profits, which will be donated to I've Got Your Back 911 in support of mental health initiatives for first responders. In a truly community event fashion, there was other organizations as well that benefited from their volunteer activities at this event. The Rotary Club of Markdale, Warden Hicks, had a barbecue, which provided food for the attendants, and the barbecue generated an estimated of $1,400 in profits for Rotary Club activities. And the road relics generated a further 1,200 in ticket sales for their motorcycle draw, which I'm on the fence about because I did buy a ticket, and this is just more competition for me now. So the ticket sales for the motorcycle draw was for the proceeds were going to Chapman's House Hospice. There was over 200 cars on Main Street, and they were overflowing the backup lot where the old food town used to be in Markdale was full as well. And the Highlanders expressed their gratitude to everyone who volunteered and everyone who participated. Thank you, Warden Hicks. Also, sorry, I would be remiss if I didn't thank Pat and his staff for being very expeditious with the permit process. The turnaround time was a record turnaround time, and we're very glad, very grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Desai. Next is Councillor Clumpus.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and good morning, County Council. I just wanted to bring congratulations to all of the 40 recipients of the Queen's Jubilee Commemorative Award that was presented on Sunday by our MP Alex Ruff at his gathering. This is an important award that recognizes the expertise, but also the community engagement and support of many, many folks from Grey Bruce and Owen Sound, his constituencies. So my congratulations on that. And just to highlight that 3 of those recipients were from our municipality. Marjorie Davison, a longtime resident, and Martin Riordan was another one, and our own Harley Greenfield. So we're very, very proud of these folks, and I know there's one more to come, but those folks deserve it, and we're so proud of them. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Thank you, Councillor Clumpus. And Kim, do you want to maybe mention one other person?
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and thanks so much, Councillor Clumpus, for bringing this forward. I would like to, let Council know and to acknowledge our own Kevin McNabb, who received a Jubilee Medal for his leadership and initiative in the first responder category, and most specifically his work on community paramedicine and the supportive outreach service or SOS. So big congratulations and thanks to Kevin.
Okay, so next is Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and good morning, County Council. First, I would just like to say, based on CIO Wingrove's announcement, congratulations to Kevin McNabb. That is quite an outstanding honor. I do want to just mention 2 things. There's always something to celebrate in Grey County. Saugeen Valley Conservation, or rather Saugeen Valley Children's Safety Village, located at Sulphur Springs Conservation Area in West Grey, held their Super Safety Days 2022, which was a great success. It certainly is safety programming for children that as a council here, we certainly support. And Neustadt Springs Brewery hosted an open house for the village of Neustadt this past weekend. And it was just an opportunity to reconnect and celebrate the village. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Next is Councillor Boddy.
Thank you, Warden Hicks. Yesterday, I had the pleasure of attending the Pan-African flag raising, at Georgian College, and attended with Kim and with Selwyn. MP Ruff, new president of Georgian College, Kevin Weaver, was in attendance. They raised this flag for the first time in recognition of Emancipation Day, and they chose to do it in Owen Sound, given our long history of emancipation here. So it's pretty special. On March 24th, 2021, the Canadian government, Parliament, passed a unanimous resolution to recognize Emancipation Day and declare it for August 1st. Well, I can't remember the first mover was from the Liberal Party, but it was seconded by our Alex Ruff, which is pretty special to have. Private members bill being passed is unusual, and unanimous vote, of course, is also pretty unusual. So it was pretty special and something that I think Alex deserves a lot of credit for. Before that, Senator Wanda Banks and several others had tried to get it through, and it would, go to the end of the line. And of course, as the Parliament dissolved for elections or otherwise, it kept getting bumped off the table and having to be brought again. So it was, it's nice to see that recognized and see the work done by Alex to pull in his party members and make sure they're all there for it. This weekend, we celebrate the 160th Emancipation Day here in Owen Sound, or really, I think it's more of a Grey County event than an Owen Sound event, given our history. It's the oldest continuously running festival or picnic in North America, which is pretty impressive. We all know there's Indigenous people here long before we were here, but after the War of 1812, the British government promised any slave or Black person that fought alongside their side land in Canada, and they were given land, as we know now, in the Priceville area. And they started to come in 1815, 16, 17, 20. The surveyors from England, Ireland, Scotland wouldn't have been here until the mid-30s or late 30s. So long before white settlers came into this region, there were Black settlers that were welcomed certainly by the Nawash. So on Friday night at Grey Roots Museum, there's a presentation. We have to be there at 6, but I think it starts at 7, if I'm not mistaken. Speeches and educational things, and it's Diane Brathwaite is by the picnic at Harrison Park, where it's been held for 100 plus years, starting at 10 a.m. With ceremonies there, and then some pretty amazing all day long. So if you are around, it's a really good event to come and attend. A lot of the historic families from the area come back to the picnic, and grandchildren, great-grandchildren, 5th, 6th, 7th generation, whatever it is, come back, and they bring their families back, and they share stories and meet their cousins, and it's a special day. So encourage everyone to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Body. And next is Councillor Keaveney.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Warden. I wanted to mention that there's going to be a special open line show for Bruce Gray, Owen Sound former MPP Bill Murdoch on Bayshore Broadcasting's AM radio station 560 tomorrow morning. Murdoch, who's 77 years old and has hosted the open line for many years, as many as 3 days a week, is in failing health. He is currently in hospice care after being diagnosed with cancer in recent years. Listeners are invited to call and share memories and say hello to Bill, who will be listening. The show will start after the 9 a.m. news. The number to call is 519-376-7777. So I hope lots of people will call in and share a memory with Bill. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Keaveney. Councillor Patterson, you're next.
Thank you, Warden Hicks. Just sharing that if you're looking for something to do this weekend, on Saturday, the Hanover Raceway is holding its annual Dream of Glory race with 3-year-old trotters from all over Ontario racing. The purse is $50,000, and it's also being advertised as an extravaganza event for fireworks. So it should be a good evening. It's going to start at 6:15 once only. Normally it's an afternoon event. So if you're looking for something to do, come on out. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not see any other. Oh, sorry. Councillor Carleton.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Just backing up to the Platinum Jubilee Award winners, our own Georgian Bluffs Carol Barfoot was one of the recipients. So we're quite proud of Carol for receiving that. Thank you.
Very good. I saw pictures of the coins. They're quite nice, aren't they? All right. Have I got everyone now? I think I have. That said, we'll move on. We'll go to adjournment. So I need a mover. Moved by Councillor Mackey, seconded by Councillor Gamble. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That is carried. Thank you. We'll take a second to turn over to Committee of the Whole. Good to go, Rob? Yes, thank you. Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. We're now meeting as Committee of the Whole, July 28th, 2022. Is there any declaration of interest, pecuniary or otherwise? Seeing none, once again, I'll say that if one comes up during the course of the meeting, I would ask you to declare it at that time. We have some business arising from the minutes, Committee of the Whole, July 14, 2022. It's a notice of motion by Councillor Soever. So perhaps Councillor Soever, can I count you as the mover?
Yes.
And I need a seconder, please. Seconded by Councillor Bordignon. Councillor Soever, you have the floor.
Yes, I'm bringing this notice of motion because, our official plan does call for the tracking of and collection of a bunch of different types of data. And those are listed there and include land utilization, including the supply of occupied and vacant residential, commercial, and industrial land, which is to be done on an annual basis. The net residential density and mix of development occurring within the community planning areas, redeveloping areas, and the nodes in each local municipality, which is also to be done on an annual basis. And particularly item C, the range and market value of housing types, including the percent of affordable housing measured in relation to the benchmark set out in section 4.1 of this plan, which is to be done on an annual basis. And also the types and number of development applications processed. And this is also to be done on an annual basis. And then there's economic and other economic data, and I won't read the entire list, but recently in preparing for an Ontario Land Tribunal hearing, I was looking for this data, and then I realized that we aren't collecting the data that our official plan suggests we should be collecting, and therefore I sent a motion in and then followed up with a meeting with the warden and the CAO. And this is the amended motion that is resulted. So, I think we should be doing this. And, obviously there's a lot of work in here, but we did put it in our official plan to say we would be doing this on an annual basis. And what we're seeing is an unprecedented amount of development throughout Grey County. And so in order to be able to manage that property and keep track of what's happening where, and where we would need, like item H talks to water and wastewater servicing capacity, unless we know what that is throughout the county, we cannot make informed decisions on, at the council table when we're asked to approve developments. These developments are impacting our communities in many different ways. And we need to make sure that Grey County develops in a healthy manner. I mean, we have a very big problem in the town of Blue Mountains in that we're only getting very expensive homes. And there are no places for the average person to live. And we're seeing restaurants having to cut down their hours. We're seeing grocery stores understaffed and unable to stock their shelves. We have an issue with volunteer firefighters. The people that are moving here are not volunteering. I mean, they're buying $2 million homes. And I know that, and we've had to transition to a half professional, half volunteer fire department, which every time we transition one position from volunteer to professional, it costs the taxpayers $130,000 or so a year for that one position that converts from a volunteer to a fully professional one. So eventually, these have huge impacts on the way we live, and also on the local, on budgets. And so that's why I'm bringing this motion. And, I had suggested a report on a shorter timeline, but, after consultation with the warden and the CAO, I think there is a lot of data to collect here, and what some of it might be fairly easily obtained. Some might require a bit more work. So I think what's here before us today is for the staff to bring back a report as soon as possible on a plan rather than a report immediately, but a plan to how we're going to be able to deal with what's in our official plan right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Soever. Are there any other speakers to the motion? Then I'll call the question. Oh, Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Warden Hicks. To me, this sounds very much like a notice of motion that's saying staff go do your job, without taking into consideration that since the official plan was passed, there has been a pandemic which has required staff to change how they do things. It's taken away time from things that they would like to do. So I feel this is a bit of an insult to staff. We have great quality staff here that know what their job is, that do their job. And so I can't support this motion on that basis. Thank you, Warden Hicks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Warden Hicks. I'd like a comment from our CAO and maybe our deputy CAO.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Through you, Mr. Warden, I'd like Scott Taylor to comment, if you would, please. We did have some extensive discussions with staff, and I think Scott can give you some insight here. Scott?
Oh, sorry about that. Having trouble working the mic this morning. Thank you, through you, Mr. Warden. Yeah, with respect to the notice of motion brought forward, the official plan, as Councillor Soever has highlighted, does lay out a number of things that that we've committed to tracking through the official plan. Staff had a plan to do this, and we had started doing so in late 2019 and into early 2020, and of course then the pandemic came along. That said, there is still a lot of merit in tracking these, and of course following our own official plan. Some of the data, as Councillor Soever has noted, is data that the county is already collecting. Some of the data, as in wastewater treatment capacity and water treatment capacity, would be data that you're collecting at the municipal level. And some of the data mentioned will be a little bit more difficult to track. So if the notice of motion, or if the motion is supported, staff would certainly commit to bring back a report after talking with our colleagues at the municipal level and starting to look at some of those further data sources on how we could do this and what makes sense in terms of reporting perspective going forward, such that the data is presented in a useful format that both council, municipal staff, and members of the public could understand. So it will take a bit of time to bring that together, but I anticipate that initial report sort of outlining the next steps is something we could do before too long. Certainly be happy to answer any further questions if there are any.
Thank you. Councillor Mackey.
Thanks, Mr. Warden. Good morning, County Council. Scott, if the motion is not supported, will this information still be coming forward from the planning department?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Warden. Yeah, we're still looking at tracking this data. We didn't have a firm time frame, but it's something that's still on our radar and on our work plan in that regard. So I suppose maybe the only difference might be that we might not bring forward that first interim report talking about how we're going to do things, and we might proceed right to the tracking. But one of the things that we flagged in discussion with Councillor Soever in relation to this motion is that report, if we're skipping right to the tracking report, will be a big one, and not being able to speak for the availability of the data at both the municipal and other levels. We didn't feel comfortable in committing to, saying we're going to have this report for September, because certainly even just tracking the data from our 9 member municipalities, let alone what we have to do in-house, will take a bit of time, and it's quite likely that tracking report might not be until the new term of council. That said, I think it's entirely reasonable that we could bring forward the interim report talking about, some solutions or some strategies that we might move forward with in short order. And in my opinion, that could be certainly within this term of council.
Thank you, Councillor Soever.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden. And, in response to Councillor Desai's comments, I'm not suggesting that our staff is not excellent staff. And they do their jobs, but I also recognize that it's council's job to provide oversight and provide direction. And when we see gaps that have, for whatever reason, developed, is to bring that to the attention of staff. And, because you do that and you say, we should be doing this, is merely, you're not criticizing staff for not doing it. That's not my intention. It's merely to exercise the oversight role that our taxpayers have given us as members of council. I mean, that happens in private companies as well. I mean, the board gives direction to the staff, and just as council gives direction to municipal staff. So I don't see, I'm not being critical of staff. I'm merely fulfilling my responsibilities as a councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Keaveney.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, but I was also going to ask, as Councillor Patterson did, for comments from our CAO. So thank you.
Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Warden Hicks. I don't think I said that Councillor Soever was criticizing staff. However, we have provided direction in the form of the official plan document that we've approved. The oversight part of it, instead of this being a motion, this could have been a question that could have been sent to the CAO, and the CAO could have answered it. I do feel that we are ignoring the fact that there has been a pandemic which has required work plans to be altered, and I'll leave it at that. I never said Councillor Soever was criticizing staff or that he didn't think our staff was great quality. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not see any other hands, so perhaps it's time to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed?
Mr. Warden.
I was waiting for that. You don't even need to say it.
Okay.
Madam Clerk.
Councillor Mackey,
Opposed.
Councillor Gamble. Councillor Gamble is opposed. Councillor Mackey is opposed. Councillor Burley. Councillor Burley is opposed. Councillor Carlton.
Opposed.
Councillor Carlton is opposed. Councillor McQueen is not with us yet. Councillor Desai. Councillor Desai is opposed. Councillor Patterson. Councillor Patterson is opposed. Warden Hicks
In support.
Warden Hicks is in support. Councillor Clumpus. Councillor Clumpus is opposed. Councillor Keaveney.
Opposed.
Councillor Keaveney is opposed. Councillor Body. Councillor Body is opposed. Councillor O'Leary.
Opposed.
Councillor O'Leary is opposed. Councillor Woodbury.
Opposed.
Councillor Woodbury is opposed. Councillor Milne.
Nay.
Councillor Milne is opposed. Councillor Soever.
In favor.
Councillor Soever is in favor. Counselor Bordignon,
In favor.
Counselor Bordignon is in favor. Counselor Robinson,
Opposed.
Counselor Robinson is opposed. Counselor Hutchinson,
Opposed.
Counselor Hutchinson is opposed. That motion was lost 69-16.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, so we are on to delegations. Now, our first delegation is Doug McMillan, President of the letter M. Rob, will you be making some introductions?
Okay, good morning, County Council. It's my pleasure this morning to introduce to you Doug McMillan. Doug is the president of the letter M, and Doug and his team, in particular Stacy, who was unable to join us, have done some exceptional work with us over the last few months in developing an update for our corporate communication strategy, which will be in front of you a little bit later today. Some of you may recognize Doug. The letter M did do some work with us on, or did do work with us on our original communications strategy. So if he looks familiar, that is probably why. And maybe you did talk to Doug or Stacy through part of this process. So I don't want to take away any of your thunder, Doug. So I will pass it over to you to outline the findings and recommendations of the communications strategy.
Thank you, Rob. Good morning, Warden Hicks and County Council and members of the leadership team. You promised thunder, Rob. That's a great setup. Thank you. I think we can certainly promise a great quality strategy. And again, I'll tip my hat to Stacey McCarthy. She's taking some well-earned time with her family. All of the heavy lifting on this strategy fell to Stacey. I was pleased to be called in every once in a while for an opinion or a thought or two, but certainly the strategy before you is the great work led by Stacey and other members of our team as well. So what I thought I'd do is, if I may share my screen, we'll just sort of walk through a few of the highlights. It's an 86 or 7-page report. So really this does skim the surface of a lot of great ideas, but if I can do my best to give you a pretty decent tour, it'll just help get a sense of where we're aiming this. So I will let the tech get organized here. Okay, great, thank you. So really, yes, this is, it draws on some work that we were able to do together 5 or 6 years ago in 2016 to build the first communication strategy. So it's a great opportunity to sort of reflect on what was recommended, the changes in our world, and goodness knows we've seen a few since then, and be able to then build on the good work of 2016 and Rob's team and Kim's team in that time to bring this forward. You know, we'll reflect often in the strategy, the full document, on sort of what was recommended in 2016 and what we're suggesting now based on changing needs. But first, just a quick sort of snapshot of the urgency behind communications at a municipal, at a local government level. And this is from 2018, so it's pre-COVID, but McMaster Journal of Communication is sort of one of our golden rule organizations and documents to sort of guide this. We have to be reminded that the role of municipalities is so critical in reaching community members. And COVID, of course, taught us that better than anything in the last century. And as it says here, how municipal governments respond and communicate affects more people with great consequence. So it's a tip to your hat to invest in this level of work and to make sure that you are doing all you can to not only reach but engage with your community members and do it as efficiently and with as much quality as possible. And so our job is to help you get there. So to help you get there, we do a pretty deep dive before we come back with any suggestions and recommendations. It's very important that we get our hands on as much as we can. And Rob was was gracious to load up our inbox with various strategies, action plans, the CSP, even the official plan is before us, as well as then we can dig down into, how you're communicating using social media and email newsletters, and of course the website itself, how you're engaging with and sharing content through media, et cetera. So a pretty good secondary review of everything going on now sets the stage for our learning. And then from there, one of the most effective strategies in this research work is a best practice engagement with communicators from other municipalities. In my career, I've never seen a sort of a sector of a greater willingness for collaboration and sharing ideas and learnings and experiences. And certainly municipal communicators have had plenty over the last 2.5, 3 years that helped to highlight what we could bring to you. So some of the recommendations draw on their experience, pardon me, and we looked for comparable communicators. No value in talking to the City of Toronto communications team about their experience. Yours is different. Your needs of Gray are different, and so we talked to the Huron County and Bruce County and Northumberland and whatnot to look at how others, including my own Wellington County, where I live here in Fergus. So we found that very helpful. As well, we completed 17 one-on-one interviews, and I recognize, nice to see faces to some of the phone calls I had with you over the last few months, as well as Stacy. So these included what we'll call internal representatives, such as community leaders, such as yourselves, and senior staff and communication staff, but also community members, such as business representatives, nonprofits, representatives of the First Nations community, to make sure that we had as large a grasp, as firm a grasp as possible on the needs of the community, but also candidly on how you're doing. And then finally, we sort of wrap that up with a fairly succinct public survey. There's always risk of survey fatigue, and so we try to keep it very efficient and focused. We're pleased to say we saw 558 responses. It was a larger number than in 2016 when we did this work. So the community is clearly interested in sharing input on how to best communicate with them and what they want to know. So this can sort of twist some of our assumptions that the pundits and communications tend to make by actually going straight to the folks who need and require this information. So all of that was fairly carefully analyzed. It was one of the junctures where I was brought in to work with Stacy Sarah, kind of the digital version of putting it all out on the dining room table and analyzing what we're hearing and having good exploratory conversations. So what did we learn? Well, in many ways, we reinforced what we knew around audiences, right? It's very important in communications to know who we're speaking to and to go as granular as we can and not just see it as us and community, but recognize the sort of the symbiotic and somewhat circular nature of how we communicate. Because the minute word gets out, it circles around and spreads and moves through communities. So something we might say to a business organization will inevitably make it to their customers, their staff, that sort of thing. So that big bubble in the center is purposefully the big one. It's where we must start in communicating, first and foremost with you, with the community leaders on council, but then also staff and senior managers. They are the ambassadors. There are hundreds of great communicators ready to put the word out into the community. So equipping them helps those circles around get moved in an efficient way and with some consistency. So this helps us meet the overall challenge of getting the right data to the proper audience with the preferred method to reach them most effectively. And all of this is to say we might have one message that goes out in several different tones and messages, depending on who we're talking to, and using more than, say, 1 or 2 channels to do it in order to reach everyone. So what we learned many strengths and saw some great accomplishments from the 2016 plan, and it was nice to see so many of the recommendations be able to move forward, given the times, and appreciate earlier conversations around the complexity of the global pandemic and its influence on the ability to get things done. No more than in communications, for sure. There were a lot of surprises to navigate through all of this. But what we learned is that since 2016, a recommendation for an internal first communication strategy has been very effectively implemented, primarily through you and through directors and managers who then have channels, tools, and strategies to move that content down into their teams. We were helped, compared to 6 years ago, by a much more digitally connected staff team. And it's always one of the challenges had been traditionally that reaching those who are not typically on email or cracking open a laptop to do their jobs may miss the missives that come from the corporate communications team. But COVID required a digital connection of team and bringing us together that way. And so we're able to lean into that new resource base to help get the word out more effectively. We were pleased to see that there are many very strong existing internal and external, but communication strategies that don't need to be replaced. There's no interest here in sort of putting our stake in the ground with a brand new bold strategy. There are good new ideas in here, but what is working should continue to work. And such as, the grapevine, CAO updates, the staff appreciation, the celebrations. I was thrilled to be able to listen in earlier to the celebrations of the community. These are the things as a community team that we want to lead with. We were pleased to see a much more sophisticated, I guess, or coordinated approach to issues management, anticipating and getting ahead of the messaging to prevent confusion or behaviors that are not desirable or preferred in the community, to help guide people toward the information and the actions that you require to meet your mandates. So that's very well ingrained and largely successful since the strategy was put into place. This is all coming to bear, point number 5 here, in results. So that survey I mentioned, one of the questions we ask is basically, how are we doing? And the public's rating of Gray communications efforts increased year 2016 to now by about 6%. So from a 66% sort of satisfaction, high satisfaction rating to more than 72. Given, again, the complexities of the last few years and the almost the level of panic that the public, and we've all had through some of this, the demands and expectations on communicators certainly rose. And so to see an increase in overall satisfaction suggests that this work is paying off and that people are getting the information that they need. And partly that, to go to number 6 here around resource, is you are very effectively resourced and sufficiently resourced for communications within the organization. That's a credit to the leadership, because often that investment is a little behind where it needs to be, and they're kind of scrambling to get enough bodies and enough resource. Not to say that there isn't some pretty significant stretch going on, but you're really well resourced with high quality skilled people who are sort of capturing the respect and the trust of staff and senior leaders to be able to centralize and coordinate really efficient, good quality communications, and that's something to be celebrated. We also were really thrilled to see one of the recommendations we made 6 years ago was around bringing all of the communicators, those responsible in the various townships and municipalities within the county, bringing those groups together. And once or twice a year, they're able to convene really just to swap stories and to help look for synergy and alignment between their goals and how to communicate. That leads to reduced confusion, stronger relationship and reliance on one another, and ultimately that's what's contributing to some of those higher scores. And I know that in our interviews, there's a great value and appreciation put on those meetings every few months to come together. We certainly saw a good balance of digital sort of new media and traditional print and newspaper. This is still very much a need in community, especially in larger rural urban municipalities and counties, where not just demographically because of, say, age-led preferences, but also access and the fact that people have different levels of connectivity. So we need to rely on some of the traditional media to help get the word out, and that's being done well. And then another area of growth has been to us the plain language, very customer, consumer, public friendly communication. We're calling it summary reports, but basically when you take an incredibly complex 100, 200 page strategy, say, such as the environment strategy that came out recently, when we can condense that to really clear language of why this matters and how the public can play a role, and make it work with everyone's needs in terms of learning and communication, such as strong use of visuals and infographics. That really helps make those strategies sort of sing and stick out into the community. And a lot of good work is going into that. So where are some of the opportunities in what we learned? And some of them match what we just talked about, because we can continue our efforts, say, in internal engagement with staff. The county's doing really well. This is one area where we have to keep our shoulder right at the grindstone, because staffing changes frequently. Of course, we're all learning about the Great Resignation and some of those adjustments that are happening that mean that new staff come and go, and we constantly need to stay focused on keeping that internal first focus. We did see a need for a stronger sort of commitment to liaison between departments and the corporate communications team. The departments hold all of that subject matter excellence and knowledge, and there's a strong reliance and need for content and data and answers to questions to come in a clear pipeline between communications and the department. So some of that work is happening. More is necessary, in our opinion, and certainly Rob has agreed that that's an area where they'll be able to bring some focus.
Sorry to interrupt you, Doug.
Yes.
Just being conscious of time and wanting to make sure we have some questions, the ability to answer some questions. I'm just wondering if we could skim through a little bit here. That would work.
Absolutely.
On your end? Thank you.
If I may, I'll wrap up this slide, which really did capture the main opportunities. The other slides are highlights and spotlights, and I'll just not go there to allow for discussion based on the report. So it'll be another 2 or 3 minutes on this. Does that suit?
Yep, that would be perfect. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, so yeah, point number 4 here really is around ensuring and continuing to focus on making sure that the council is as equipped with as much information and communication as possible. So, continuing to receive internal communications like the CAO update, making sure you've got access to the grapevine. One of our recommendations that I kind of glossed over was around a stronger commitment to training and development, because the communications world moves very quickly right now. So council members should certainly have the opportunity to participate in those training programs and some of the skill development that could be offered to other staff as well. Point number 5 really speaks to a need that we identified for more of a triaging system within the communications department. Everyone's needs are important, and there's no doubt that they are treated with importance, but based on an outside-in look at what is needed in the community and the urgency behind different communication goals, there has to be a bit of a prioritizing process of resource to ensure that the most critical needs are being met in the organization. Point number 6 really speaks to one area, and again, this I think comes down to sort of the complexities of COVID getting in the way of just trying to get the job done, is there are some degree of metric measurement and reporting happening to analyze and evaluate the effectiveness of the work. More can be done in that area. I think we all agree to that. And that's an area of focus that will come in the following years. Point number 7 really speaks to building and strengthening what is already a good start around community partnership and building strong relationships with the organizations that help us get the word out, and that we can help them with some synergy in messaging, you know, connecting strongly with the communicators at public health, for example, with school boards and other organizations, brings some continuity to the work and ultimately makes it, you know, all hands on deck to make it a little bit easier. A little more work on brand development. The logo itself is solid and strong after many years, so it speaks to the quality of that work. The tone and voice and some consistency in visuals continue to call on additional effort and focus. And then really just around the website, I know that brand new websites are coming soon and will be necessary to meeting the current needs of community. In there, we recommended an app very strongly that was highly received in some of our research, that a mobile and a tablet app can provide a lot of information to people. And then finally, just around really exploring more innovative means of engagement. Some of the traditional tools that we've been using are not in favor anymore by the public. COVID has changed some of that. And so there are some new approaches that are highlighted in the strategy that help us keep in front of how people need to want to be engaged to help inform you to do your job as effectively. So I'll wrap it up there, and very happy to answer any questions. Sorry, I've kind of prattled on there for a little bit. It was a lot to share from 86 pages in a few minutes, but I'll stop my sharing and very happy to continue talking.
Well, thank you very much, Doug. I have a quick question. Doug, are you going to be around when this strategy is going to be discussed later in the agenda?
I was not asked to be. I can be, or I can. I'm not sure of the timing of that in the agenda. Happy to stick around.
The reason I asked that question is, in the interest of time, I was going to hold on questions and allow the questions to come up during the staff after the staff report, which would allow us to get to our other guests who are here. We're quite behind on time. So that's my suggestion, but I don't want to not have council have the opportunity to ask you questions, Doug. So if you're going to be leaving, then we'll ask those questions now. But if you can be around, I'll hold on questions until the staff report.
I'm happy to be available.
Okay, and perhaps Rob can shoot you a text or something just to let you know exactly when we'll be getting to that item, so you don't have to stick around on the call the whole time.
Sounds good.
Okay, and I apologize, Rob. So I plan to come back to this when you do your report. I'm going to suggest that we take a break, and I apologize to our other delegates. We've been sitting quite some time. So I'm going to suggest, what time is it now? 11:15, that we come back at 11:30. And we'll continue with the other two delegations. My apologies to both of them. So back at 11:30. Call everyone back. 15 minutes goes fast. Okay, so we have on deck John Kervick. Did I pronounce your name correct? Your last name correctly, John? Kervink. Thank you. You're gonna give us you're gonna give us an update on the new Markdale Hospital.
Lit up.
Oh, there. Good morning, warden, counselors and staff. So Markdale Hospital. So here's a rendering of the front entrance. We're not quite there yet. But background on the hospital. So the last presentation to council was in 2021. So construction started, project $69 million project, 90-10 cost share. So 90% from the provincial government, 10% from the community, but 100% community for furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So we've gotten, significant support clearly from Center Grey Health Services Foundation and also Grey County. And we're very appreciative of the donation of land and funds as well. So where we are, building actually, I just signed the latest draw. So we're at 60% based on dollar value. Curb work, sidewalks complete, lower level looking very good. The roof's complete. They're going to start on the siding. Window frames are in. So it's coming along really nice. It's quite exciting to walk through it every month. Transition planning. We're starting the planning with healthcare relocations who are looking at helping us move from the old hospital to the new hospital. And you can see a listing of what's going on there in terms of their activities. And actually today, they're taking today and tomorrow to go through the old Markdale Hospital with the team to say, how do you do things here? And then they're going through the new building and, planning the transition, because that's a significant step. Here's some pictures. Pictures are worth 1,000 words. So that's one of the views from the outside. And you can see I was going to go back here. You can see the wood beams, which are really nice. The wood in the project. And you'll see that when you walk into the main entrance, there's a nice sort of foyer that's got a lot of wood treatments. For the electrical people, that's the picture of some of the work downstairs in terms of the HVAC and electrical. And the view from the other side, you can see some of the cladding is already up. Another angle as we walk around the hospital. View from the driving into the main entrance. So that is really approaching the main entrance to the hospital. Around the other side where you see the portico, that's the emerge entrance over on that side. And on the back, I don't know if it shows that, probably not. You would see the ambulance bays where the ambulances would pull in. So this is what it looks like when you walk into the hospital rendering, and you can see the wood that I was speaking to. Another view. It's going to be lots of light, both on the first and second level. It's going to be incredible relative to the hospital they've been dealing with for, we wanted to rebuild that for 20 or 30 years. This has been an ongoing project. So we're on track, substantial completion by the summer. Saying the TBD is based on labor disruptions. They had a number of strikes. I'm happy to say that I was notified by Bird that the latest disruptions, which were, I think the carpenters were on strike, the lasers were on strike. Those are all resolved. Currently, the only labor issue that may affect the project, and may not really, is the inspectors for the elevators. That group is on strike presently. So we hope to open next fall. So what's in the hospital? We were able to negotiate. The hospital was originally going to open with only 4 beds. And right away, we knew based on the occupancy and how busy it is and the growth we're seeing in Markdale community, we needed more. So we're able to squeeze 3 additional beds. So we're going to open with 7 plus a palliative care bed, 24/7 emergency room, a lot of ambulatory services, which is really, you know, hospitals are trying to push more things out into ambulatory care as opposed to having to stay in a hospital. So you can see there's procedure room for endoscopies and colonoscopies. We'll have diagnostic imaging there, lab, a cafe, the foundation, of course, because we'll continue to always raise funds because we always have to replace all the equipment in the building. And we have a lot of room. You can park a truck downstairs with the extra space we have. And so we're already planning that we need to have a CT in Markdale. In fact, we need to have a CT in all our campuses, you know, with the exception probably of Lion's Head because it's a little small there. But really, that's our future plan is CTs are the new standard of care. So the current hospital, it'll continue to operate until we move it over. Afterwards, we're going to decide what to do with that campus. So we'll put an expression of interest out to the community to see what we might use it for. And we're asking, you know, our staff what we could do with it. But we'll see what happens with the old hospital, but it's still a nice location downtown. As far as information, we'll be back as we get closer to fruition on the project. The foundation's also in the loop. We have lots of pictures posted. You can see that on our website. And as well, if you've got questions, we have an email address where people can forward the questions and we get some of those certainly. And I think that's it. That's the whirlwind tour of the Markdale Hospital, but happy to entertain any questions you might have.
Well, thank you very much for that update. Very exciting. Nice to see the pictures. Council, any questions? Madam CAO.
Thanks, Mr. Warden. And John, I just want to offer our thanks on behalf of the staff. When you have a significant construction project like this that's happening adjacent to the facility that we have at Grey Gables, there's always the potential for there to be, you know, unexpected conflicts or things like that. And this project has gone so well. And I just really want to offer our thanks to everybody at GBHS for all of the attention to detail and your willingness always to keep us up to date as things moved along and have opportunities to try and work together and solve problems together. It's been so appreciative, and the facility is lovely. Thank you.
Councillor Mill.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and thank you, John, for the update. It's been it is very exciting, and it continues to look great from the outside looking in. In regards to the operations of the new hospital, I would expect it like to be a net increase of staff required for the new hospital. How are you anticipating mitigating some of these staff challenges that we see in the current healthcare facilities, not just Markdale, but across the broad industry or sector rather? Do you have plans on how to mitigate those challenges? Thank you.
There. Yeah, the HHR challenges across the system are significant, as you read that in the paper and on the news and on TV every day. So certainly we're not immune to that. And in terms of any unique strategy for the Markdale campus and the staffing, it's you know, all the staff at the present hospital, you know, there's no reductions in force for sure, because the hospital's quite a bit larger than the old one, but less acute care beds. But you know, we're actively working with Georgian College, and we're really excited about their nursing program starting this fall. And there may be opportunities for a lab program for medical technologists, which is my old alma mater. So I'd be happy to see, you know, that. And of course, we always are looking for physicians, but it's a system problem. So we're we're recruiting actively and using kind of whatever means we can to bring staff to Owen Sound. I mean, the challenge we have, system-wise is housing. Housing is a challenge, and as you know, rental housing is difficult to find, and affordable housing, just because I think there used to be a fair gradient between the GTA and here, but that's really changed. And so, some of that's a barrier when we're bringing staff. So we've put in, we're renting housing presently for in one of the buildings in town to be able to offer that to staff that we're trying to recruit for difficult to recruit positions, to say, here, we'll give you an apartment and you can rent it at a subsidized rate for a period of time while you get the lay of the land and find your own place. So hopefully that'll help. But we're cannibalizing, I guess is the right term, each other, because all the hospitals are looking for people, and long-term care is looking for staff as well as home support. So it's a big problem. I wish I had a solution I could give you, but I don't.
Thank you. Any other questions? No one else. Thank you, sir. Really appreciate the update. Thank you. Okay, on deck, I guess, Jacinda, are you going to be making introductions, or is it Savannah? Okay.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Warden. Good morning, County Council. I am here to introduce three wonderful folks who are working on settlement services and immigration partnerships across Grey and Bruce counties. As you know from our previous reports and delegations, this is definitely a partnered approach, and it has been from day one, all the way back to application development. Had all of these folks together. So we want to introduce Deepika and Sunit and David, who are introducing and talking about what this partnership looks like to provide that full service to our immigration and newcomer folks in the area, as well as our employers and our municipalities and all of the stakeholders involved, because it does take a real village and a real partnership to make this happen. So they are here from Grey Bruce Local Immigration Partnership, from Settlement Services and Welcoming Communities Grey Bruce. So I will hand the floor to them.
Good morning, council members. Good morning, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for your time today. And we are here to share with you all that how Grey Bruce Local Immigration Partnership, Welcoming Community Grey Bruce, and YMCA of Owen Sound is acting as a circle of support for newcomer integration. So I will start with Grey Bruce Local Immigration Partnership, which is Immigration Refugee Citizenship Funded Program, which covers the program delivery and two staff position, myself as the coordinator and May Ape as outreach specialist. And we are being supported by economic development staff from both Bruce County and Grey County. From Bruce County, we are being supported by Pierre Valley and Manpreet Kaur Sangha. And from Grey County, we are being supported by Jacinda Rudolph. And we work so closely that I forget sometimes. And we started in 2020, and we got the funding, and there are across Canada, we have 80 LIPs, and we are the 81st LIP. We are very new to the LIP world. And in Ontario, we have 36, and we are the 37th. What we basically do, we try to integrate and collaborate between various stakeholders who are invested in integration of newcomers. And we have developed our strategy in 2021, which identified these 4 pillars where we are really working hard to build capacity by including and creating awareness among municipalities on how to be more welcoming. We are trying to strengthen community by acknowledging the strength of diversity and hosting events. We're trying to cultivate prosperity by initiating region-wide mentorship program where local residents are matched up with the newcomers in their employment journey. We're trying to foster inclusion by lending our support to organizations who are developing anti-racism and anti-discrimination work, such as City of Owen Sound is working toward developing their plan, and we are supporting them as well. Coming to our composition, we are being led by a 57-member partner council, and it comes from various sectors, from health, education, all municipalities, school boards, French as second language and English as second language, all other sectors. We have 3 subcommittees working towards specific needs we identified based on employment subcommittee, which is working towards employment integration. And we are holding the roundtables as well, where we are discussing best practices and challenges in hiring and retaining newcomers all across Grey and Bruce. We have community subcommittee to initiate that community integration piece. And we have developed, and our community subcommittee have developed welcome resource, which are customizable for each municipality. And we will be sharing it soon with all municipality staff too. Belong subcommittee is really working toward make newcomer feel that they belong to this Grey and Bruce. And we are having our event in August. One of our partner members, they are planning that event, and we are supporting them to host that event. And it's really toward working and integrating all those pieces. With that, I will pass over to Melissa for discussing about how they are acting as direct support to the newcomer in the region.
Good morning, councillors. My name is Melissa D'Souza Harris, and I'm a settlement worker at YMCA Grey Bruce Settlement Services. I'm here to present our services to you. We are also funded by the immigration IRCC as direct support for newcomers within our community. We help newcomers to Canada integrate and settle into our local communities and across the country. Our focus is holistic and to empower and strengthen our clients' skills and families to achieve their full potential and enrich their new home communities. We partner with our service providers within our communities that are already invested and provide collaborative support to our newcomers to ensure good outcomes. We have 3 pillars that we draw upon. First being our needs assets assessment and referrals, whereby we meet with our clients and we understand their full picture and create action plans with them to see their goals and provide good outcomes. We support one-on-one and provide essential information, information sessions and to our newcomers just to empower them. Because knowledge is power. And we also provide opportunities to grow connections within our community and make sure that our community is welcoming and it is a sense of home. So we have language instruction for newcomers to Canada, which is provided by the IRCC. We are a mobile service delivery, so we travel across the counties. Our catchments go into Bruce and Grey, as well as we touch some of Simcoe. We have Swiss services that have been funded as of last year, which are settlement workers in school. We recognize that, you know, while we were able to support adults, newcomers within the community, there was a piece that was necessary for children to feel that sense of home as well, and support for newcomer families and have that holistic piece. We offer language interpretation, and recently we were funded for workplace language support as well. And we are very invested in working one-on-one with employers to create those good partnerships. With that, I'll give it over to David Morris.
So could we have the next slide, please? Good morning, Warden and members of the council. My name is David Morris. I'm chair of the nonprofit corporation called Welcoming Communities Grey Bruce. We're relatively new. I also remembering that I was here, gave you a fairly extensive presentation in February, so I will not go over a whole lot of our history, other than to say that we're a merger of 4 little organizations that we're all working towards the goal of making this area more welcoming and inclusive. Could I have the next slide, please? And that's our mission statement there. As I said, we want to make the area more as welcoming and inclusive of everyone as possible, whether they were born here or came from a different country or part of a group that's been historically discriminated against. We've come up with a little slogan that captures that very well. I think it says, everyone is welcome in Grey Bruce. And that's really what we're working towards. Over the years, we have, next slide, please. Over the years, we have been involved in a number of research projects to further investigate the needs of newcomers into this area and what they need to feel comfortable and welcome and settled here. And funded by both federal and the provincial government. And those are form the basis for the developments that have come along since. They gave us the background that we needed to apply successfully for the funding to get settlement services that you just heard about, and also was provided input for the funding that came along with GB LIP. Those 3 organizations are all working together. Welcoming Communities is on the advisory team for settlement services, and we're part of the Partnership Council for Grey Bruce LIP. So we're all keep our services integrated as much as possible. So what are we doing now? This spring, we've held 2 workshops, webinars for people who are thinking about sponsoring families coming from Ukraine, because we realize there's a big learning curve for people who haven't sponsored a family before, a lot to learn and be quickly overwhelmed, and we wanted to avoid that if we could. We're recreating a network of sponsorship groups such as we had for the Syrian crisis, and that's just getting going. And we're also just about to start into a project with the Owen Sound District Chamber of Commerce to address, to make our workplaces more inclusive and accepting of diversity. So that's funded by Heritage Canada. And then on a broader level, we continue to do what we can to make the community at large aware of the concerns related to racism and discrimination and the barriers that newcomers still face when they come and choose to settle in this area. So I'll leave it at that, and if there's any questions afterwards, we'd be glad to try and answer them. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, David. Good to see you again. And Pika?
One slide left, but I would just conclude on saying that just to put our work in context on how we all 3 work together, and whom you as municipal leaders can connect us with. We had a case scenario of Ukrainian families coming to the area, and really you can connect with GB LIP as finding resources, or is there any funding opportunity available, or other groups in other all across Grey Bruce who are working toward that same cause, and like those indirect services, and they can connect with settlement for any direct services, which school their kids will be going, how to navigate the banking system, if they need English language support, and any employment related queries, they can go to settlement directly. And Welcoming Community Grey Bruce is really bridging that gap of that connection, making our community ready to accept and accommodate newcomers in the area. And as LIPS, we are really working toward collaboration, connecting and bringing together all agencies, stakeholders, and municipality to be more inclusive and welcoming. And we are happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you, Deepika. And Melissa. Good to see you as well. I was going to say, on my way into the building this morning, as I was entering, I saw a little sign on the glass portion of one of the doors. I don't know if others saw it, but it was a sign, had various colors, and it said, "Everyone is welcome here." The work that you folks are doing is so important, and I want to thank you for that. Council, are there any questions? Councillor Robinson first.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warden, and I thoroughly appreciate this presentation, and each time the delegation comes forward to Grey County. Timing is absolutely wonderful. Right now, there has been Connect through West Grey, or perhaps an outreach, and I will certainly provide the Connect with GB LIP. I think that's absolutely wonderful. My question is, certainly Owen Sound is the principal area, I would suggest, where the focus is on, and rightly so. And I'm just wondering if there could be a bit of discussion how the connection branches out to the other member municipalities in terms of the newcomer program and the Connects for Employment. And thank you very much.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So as Grey Bruce LIP is really working towards and in collaboration with settlement agencies, I know that settlement has remote locations, and I would let Melissa answer on that.
Hi, thank you for your question. Yes, we are a mobile service delivery, and so we will travel to clients in various communities, and we also have partnerships with different partners in the area to facilitate spaces in which to meet and connect. And we gather resources from those communities specifically and connect clients to specific resources within their community.
Thank you. And I'm very supportive of that. Well done.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Oh, 1 sec.
Okay. Comment from welcoming communities. As you're aware, there are a number of groups throughout the area who are interested in sponsoring families from Ukraine. So we have met either virtually or in person with a number of those groups to again try and share our experience from past settlements. So we're reaching out through the communities as well. And we've given this presentation to each of the municipal councils too, by the way. So some of you are hearing this for the second time.
Savannah, you had something to add?
Thank you. I just wanted to really recognize all three groups have been working together so hard to make sure we have a no wrong door approach. So it doesn't matter what organization you go to, they are so well connected and so integrated to the community that they will always find you that proper connection. There's nothing worse than being passed on and passed on and passed on. And this group is always very committed to making sure that that doesn't happen. So if they are not the right connection themselves, they will always find the right person to be able to provide assistance, whether it is to employers or organizations, municipalities, or newcomers directly. And I think that's a real power of what the three have been able to form together. And as well, because of the funding and the coverage, we are also providing full regional coverage. So they are your resource right across Grey County, and for GBLIP right across Grey and Bruce as well. So I think that's just a really important note, and really appreciate the dedication that they have put to make sure that that is an approach we can take.
Thank you, Savannah. Councillor Desai, you were next.
Thank you, Warden Hicks. I just want to start off by saying I really appreciate the work that the Grey Bruce Local Immigration Partnership is doing. I feel it personifies. In 2019, the mayor of Dawson City in Yukon, Wayne Podoroka, said, "Canadians are born all over the world. Some of them just take a little longer to get here." And I really think with the work that GBLIP is doing, it really personifies that. The question that I do have, it's perhaps a bit sensitive, but I'll provide the context for it. as everyone knows, my ethnic background is Indian. I'm from the state of Gujarat, which has had its share of communal issues. So when I saw the Concordant Hindu Festival, which I believe was being put on by GBLIP, I was a little hesitant because to me, it closes it off to a very particular section, learn about a very particular section of immigrants. And it brings back some of those communal issues to the front as well. So I wonder if Deepika could maybe expand upon that, on why we're doing a Hindu specific event, and if there will be events regarding other religions that are immigrating to Grey Bruce as well in the future. Thank you.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councillor Desai, for that question. And when we see the welcoming community characteristics, we really see two dimensions of it. You know, the spatial dimension, when we always talk about, we have space, and we talk about dimension discourse, where we have agencies supporting those events. So when we talk about this event, so we have a belong subcommittee, and where we are trying to acknowledge every culture. And this specific event popped up when we were discussing, and it was our first belong subcommittee meeting, and we decided that we have to acknowledge multiculturalism. And Chandra Tripathi, he's one of our partner council member, and he's the organizer of Sanatan. He's the main organizer of Sanatan Center. So he has organized this event, and he has been doing this event like from 19-20 years already, with the help of Bruce Power, because he was employed there. And this time, because of COVID, no one showed up. Previously, it used to be a multicultural event, and he's hoping that this event would be a multicultural, but no one showed up for this particular event. So he thought that, you know, he wanted to do this way. So that's why we did not want to hold off things. We just want to lessen the barriers and just come out of our comfortable zone to acknowledge other religions. And on the similar lines, when he said that it is open house for Hindu culture, GBLIP is not organizing that event. We are partnering, we are supporting to promote that event. So we are really we are very sovereign in that part, that even when the Lunar New Year Chinese event will be here, we will be surely promoting that as well. So it's really that Grey Bruce Local Immigration Partnership is celebrating every religion, every culture who is already here in Grey Bruce. Yes.
Councillor Robinson, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I just had a supplementary to, or rather a follow-up to my previous discussion. I do want to acknowledge the presentations that have been taking place at the lower tiers, and certainly the presentations here at County Council, most beneficial. I'm looking at the Grey Bruce LIP website, and it refers to how can we work together to make it easier for newcomers to settle here. Absolutely loaded with an abundance of information. Just it is packed with information that I think is incredible. But the one area that I just have a question, if I might, is supporting community level research and planning. And I wonder if there could just be a brief comment in terms of how that could be achieved. And thank you for your time.
To you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for that question. And I would like to share that we are already invested in research, and we have got our report as well on discriminatory study, experience of discrimination among visible minorities, indigenous group, and non-white immigrant all across Grey Bruce. We've got a very good number of respondent as well, of 611, and we will be coming up with the highlights of that shortly. But we are really working toward on that discrimination piece. That is a quantitative data. We did that research with University of Western University, and to authenticate our research that it has shown the right results, we are authenticating it with qualitative research as well with University of Guelph. So our both pieces will be covered, and then we will streamline our efforts in that direction. And one of the finding I can share, I think, is that we have found that 9 out of 10 Indigenous group feel that they are being discriminated. Really hoping that GBLIP would come up with some sort of guide for newcomer or for the residents, because we feel that there is not much of the information which is not being shared. So maybe Indigenous guide for newcomers to share their challenges and experiences as well down the lane, coming out of from one of the report.
Anything else, Councillor Robinson?
No, thank you very much for the response. It's most appreciated.
In response to that question as well. Over the past fall and winter, welcoming communities collaborated with a group from what was then called Ryerson University that were doing a study on why migrants stay in small towns and rural communities. And so we were able to connect them with some of the newcomers who had come here so they could share their experiences. And they also interviewed some of us who have been actively working to make this area an area where people want to stay. Now I haven't seen their report yet, but it should be coming soon. So there's lots of studies being done as to why they leave. This one was unique in studying why they stay, and we're looking forward to learning about what can we do even better here to facilitate that. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I don't see any other hands, so Councillor Body.
Thank you, Warden. If I may, about 10 years ago, I went to a conference down around Toronto, and there was a speaker there from Peel Region who was talking about 28,000 new Canadians coming into Peel Region a year. In the latest census, it's less than that. It's probably 16,000. Still huge numbers. And at the time, I thought, boy, if we could just get 1%, 280 people a year, it would be fantastic. And in those 10 years, we were doing nothing up here at that point. And I think it's pretty amazing what we're doing in Grey County, in Grey Bruce, through County Council, through this group, through so many steps that we've taken in 10 years. And, why would somebody originally get off an airplane and go to Peel Region? Well, there's family, there's language, there's religious supports, there's school supports, there's so many things that are there, a community that is there for them. And with all the hard work that's going on, by the people we've just listened to, it's almost like we're building a beachfront or something. We're building a community that can help others come in and follow them behind them and have those supports when they do get here to Grey and Bruce. And even the Muslim temple down the street is, who would have thought 10 years ago? And you go there on a Friday and you see how many people are coming, and it's so cool to see, a Hindu cultural open house. Like, who would have thought of that 10 years ago, that would ever happen in Grey Bruce? And it's a way of saying to people of different religions that we're here, and there's a community here that will support you. And I think it's amazing to see what's being done, what has been done, and what's going to be done. And it is pretty important. I did meet with Kevin Weaver yesterday, just before the Georgian College flag raising. And he was talking about opportunities with students coming in, and how do we keep them here, and how do we get them jobs here in Grey and Bruce so they don't have to go back to Toronto or somewhere else. And it's all part of that package, and Georgian College is so aware of it as we are. So I think it's amazing the work that everybody's been doing, and look forward to seeing where this goes. Thanks.
Through Mr. Chair, I would just like to say thank you so much for being so appreciative and supportive. And I just want to say that we have been to almost all municipalities in Grey County except Hanover, which is planned for August 8th. And it's like in every municipality we were well received and there were questions. And I'm hoping that with little seeds we are planting for being more welcoming and inclusive. I think there's a long way to go. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much for your update, your presentation, and continued success. And I look forward to seeing you in Hanover on your roadshow. All right, folks, thank you. Council, we're going to turn to the consent agenda next. Is there anything that requires separate discussion in the consent agenda? If not, then I'll call for a motion. Moved by Councillor Woodbury, seconded by Councillor Hutchison. All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Thank you. All right, now we get back to Rob, right? Rob is on deck. It's 7A. And we're now talking about our communications strategy. I need a mover to put the item on the floor. Moved by Councillor Robinson, seconded by Deputy Warden McQueen. Rob, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warden. Council, very nice to see you again. I will go through my report here briefly, and I do believe Doug is going to try to get back on when we do get to questions. So hopefully he'll be able to join us in just a moment here. But the report in front of you today is recommending that the communication strategy be received and that staff be directed to implement the recommendations found within that strategy. As you heard from Doug a little bit earlier this morning, a lot of work did go into the development of this strategy, and kudos to Doug and to Stacy for the extensive research that they did put in. In my report, I do summarize some of the key things that were done in that, as did Doug, so I won't go over those again. But I will highlight some of the goals that were developed through this strategy. And some of those are driving communications through a strategic planning and analysis. So rather than being reactive, as communications often is and does need to be, it's being better prepared through that departmental planning that Doug was speaking to earlier today. Enabling connections and support, collaboration, and the open exchange of ideas through communications. So again, that's just making sure that we're in touch with internally with our departments and what's going on, but as well with our partners. We have a strong municipal communications group that, as it happens, is getting together next week for our first meeting of 2022. So it's going to be nice to see that group again today. And I'm going to be really excited to share some of the findings of this strategy with them and what the lessons that we've learned. Another goal is ensuring that council is up to date with departmental messaging and that these are communicated to you well in advance in a fulsome, timely, and effective manner so that you can answer the questions of the communities. As leaders, you have far more interactions, I think, than the average person will with the community on a daily basis. But even as county staff, we want to keep ourselves informed because each of us are part of our communities. We all know that Grey County is a community of small communities where everybody knows everybody. So we have hundreds of interactions every day. So the best that we can keep everyone informed, the more we can act as ambassadors and share information about what's going on and the great work that's happening here at the county. And then just skimming down to a few things that I would like to highlight on here as well. The idea of communications being a lead in customer service. When you really do stop and think about it, like customer service really heavily evolves around communications, and communications is really a key part of that. And one of the findings in this strategy that I didn't necessarily see on my radar going into this process was the idea of formalizing a customer service strategy and delivery model. So I think that that's something that I'm really excited to look into if council endorses this plan, and spending some time looking at what that customer service delivery model would look like, and how we can measure our success around customer service and make improvements through time and through the life of this strategy. I think I will leave it there because I do trust that you've had a chance to look through this strategy. We have heard from Doug going over the highlights as well. So I will open it up to any questions if you do have any. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rob. Councillor Robinson, you're first.
Thank you. I've been anticipating this report, and I'm very excited about it. And I do want to commend Rob and his staff for an extremely well organized communication for Grey County throughout the years, and certainly this motion would support further enhancements, which I would encourage my colleagues to support. One question with two components, and I'm wondering if there could be consideration of possible customer service training for council, as well as communication training. And just overall, I found it very beneficial with regard to the training that we have had within the 4 years. And I was just wondering, within the projecting forward, what that would look like. Thank you very much.
Through you, Mr. Warden, I think there's a lot of potential with the idea of developing a customer service strategy. I think fulsome training for council and for staff would absolutely be a component of that in time. I don't know what that would look like right now specifically, but certainly I think it's something that we can explore more fulsome training that way. And thank you very much for your kind words about the communications department. I know that we've been working very hard as the team, as we are formed today, for the last 2.5 years, really, since the pandemic hit. That's what really centralized communications for Grey County. And I completely agree that we have I have a lot of very talented and brilliant people working with me that makes my life a lot easier to manage and stay on top of things, because there are a lot of communications needs in public service. There's always a lot that we need to talk about in our programs and services and changes, and we have a well-equipped team to deal with those.
Councillor Keaveney.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warden, and thank you, Rob, for the report. And we're lucky to have you. Everything revolves around communications, in my opinion, so it's incredibly important. Letter M, and I don't know if Doug is with us, but they just did a strategy for the municipality of Meaford last year, and we're very pleased with that. But a couple of the things that I learned, there's a much greater expectation from our residents now, and I think that certainly evolves from COVID, but people want to get their information like immediately. So I was pleased to hear you speak to timeliness, but I'll just ask you to add a further comment to that, because we learned that people they want to know right away, and it doesn't have to be fancy or glossy. They just want the quick and dirty as quickly as they can. And the other thing that really stood out in our strategy was you spoke about customer service, but response times. Again, people want to know that if they reach out to the county or the municipality, that they're going to be heard and they're going to be responded to, again, in a timely manner. So I'll just leave those comments with you to share your thoughts on.
Thank you very much for that question. I think in regards to timely communications, I think you're right. We live in an age where speed trumps accuracy. Certainly, we don't want to lose the accuracy in what we're saying, but with social media and those platforms that people have moved to, we really need to live in the moment, I think, a lot more. And we have tools like social media that we can do that. And one of the big findings in here through our public engagement was that we have the ability to leverage email a lot better. I know email seems like it's a little bit older of a tool that's been around, but we have tools like we use MailChimp is what it's called to create our email newsletters. And we can really target with those and we can specify information that people are interested in. They can subscribe for the specific things. If they want economic development updates, they can get those, and not updates on childcare, for example. They can kind of pick and choose. So I think we need to leverage those lists better, and we need to promote those lists more so that we can grow those audiences even further too. And that gives us a direct line of communication to the public. And we need to continue with our media relations as well too, to make sure that we're getting the information out there the same day that it's happening, so that it can get mass communicated through the news as well. And your second question, just regarding engagement, I think more with the public, in the strategy here, there is the recommendation and a little bit of an outline of what an engagement framework can look like for the county. And I think that that's something that's been lacking a little bit. We've taken, we've often relied on our more comfortable tactics all of the time for when there's various needs to engage with the public. And this is going to help us really have a plan when we need to inform the public. First, when do we need to engage and have feedback with them? When do we need them to do action? And we will have a fulsome list of tools and tactics to reach out in the various scenarios as they come up. And I think we can adapt the way that we're currently doing things to get more involvement too, if we are engaging with people in ways that they want to be engaged with. And that would go back to the interest in an app. I think that's a very large topic to consider, and it's going to take a lot of work looking into. Apps can be fairly they can take a lot of time to develop, and they can be costly. But it came forward in the 2016 research. It came forward again this time, and I think that it's important that we look into it. And a part of that will be talking with our member municipalities who already have apps like Grey Highlands with their Grey Highlands Connects app. And I know West Grey has some, I think, through police services that are accomplishing very specific things. So I think we need to explore those more as well. I know, Doug, did you have anything to add on that question?
Thank you, Rob. I do, yeah, a couple of thoughts around, those are critical themes, and definitely agree. That speaks to the power of the partnerships and the importance of investing in regular connection with the various community agencies that are also communicating and reaching the public, and often have sort of the shortest route. And so if we need to get information out accurately and quickly, sometimes it's faster and not necessarily better, but in addition, have a quick call or send something to, the Seniors Association. If it's the seniors we need to reach, they already have their ear and we can get them faster. And so it kind of reinforces why that's an important tactic here. And the other piece is there are several recommendations that allow for as much streamlining as possible. And to your note around response time, and you're right, I mean, we want it now and we don't have time to wait. And so the more efficiently the enterprise can create those conduits between departments and communications, between a customer service person, and we're recommending that the customer facing service role kind of fall under communications, for as immediate as we can, a conduit back between what we're hearing, what people are looking for, to reach people out. So there are several steps in the plan to try and address those really critical goals.
I do not see any other hands. So perhaps that's time to call the question, I suppose. So on the motion to receive this report and to implement the recommendations of the strategy, all those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Doug. Okay, we're going to go on to one quick second. Okay. Perhaps we'll do 7B and then we'll break for lunch. So we're dealing with the Grey Transit route update. I need a mover to put the item on the floor. Moved by Councillor O'Leary, seconded by Councillor Clumpus. Go ahead, you have the floor.
Here we are. All right. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mr. Warden. I'm pleased to provide an update on the Gray Transit route, the results of this year's proof of concept service enhancements so far, and to outline our plan to complete a service sustainability assessment to assist with decision-making around the future of this service. So you have a report before you that goes into some detail on each of the points, and I'll just try and take you through some of the highlights. I'm really pleased to be able to let council know that the public has responded very positively to your decision to make further investment in more days per week and more runs per day in the GTR service. Since that expansion began on April 1st of this year, average monthly ridership has increased by 240%. We continue to hear feedback from riders about how the service is making a difference in people's lives, both because it enables travel that would otherwise be impossible for people, and also about the excellent customer service that Driver's Seat provides. Due to ridership growth, Route 1, which is Owen Sound to Dundalk, and Route 2, the Dundalk to Orangeville buses, are occasionally booked almost to capacity. Now, Driver's Seat, if you've seen those vehicles on the road, there's a mixture of 10-person and 14-person small vans that they're driving. And when I get to talking about fuel costs, I am so grateful that we're able to provide this service with those smaller and more fuel efficient vehicles. But with regard to the ridership numbers, it's just something that we need to watch specifically on those two routes. We have been able to get our routes on Google Transit, which is probably a much more powerful way of connecting people to the service than anything we might do. But part of being on the Google Transit app is that you need to be able to allow walk-ons. And our service, we do really encourage people to book seats in advance, and they're wonderful to do that. But there is that need to always make sure that there's a little bit of space for those people who might get to a stop. One of the questions that we're asking council in this report today is to provide your thoughts about where you want to be with this service going forward. And the report does provide some estimates around the future costs of continuing with the enhanced level of service. The report estimates that continuing with the enhanced level of service through 2023 will require some additional investment. The provincial grant that we received back in 2019 is fixed. They did extend it out for 2 more years until March of 2025. But that provincial grant is fixed at $700,900 per year. That is what covers off the base level of service. In to this year's budget, there was an additional $223,300 to do these service enhancements from April to December. If we are going to continue with that same level of enhanced service for all of 2023, that will require an additional investment of $322,200, a portion of which is fuel adjustments. So we'll get to that in a minute. Fuel surcharges are calculated based on the assumption that fuel prices will average $2 a liter through 2023. In either returning back to our base level of service or continuing with the enhanced level of service, we will need to cover the cost of fuel. Our contract with Driver's Seat was based on fuel at $1.30 a liter, which at the time that we were negotiating that seemed like some healthy room to maneuver. However, having the recent fuel increases has certainly proven that to be a false assumption. Also, council will recall that Southgate has its own transfer payment agreement, MOU, with the province for the Dundalk to Orangeville part of the service. Grey County administers that on Southgate's behalf. It's just easier to have everything under one set of administration. There is on that Dundalk to Orangeville portion, a shortfall going into 2023. The report estimated at 62.8, and that number was based on, in part, some what's the word I'm looking for? Sponsorship dollars. And since we completed the report, those sponsorship dollars have actually come to us. So the accurate number there is not 62, but in fact 37. So that's a positive thing. The budget, as it's written in the report, assumes that that shortfall of $37,000 would be covered by Southgate or other external sources. But I think that we have a policy decision to make here. Basically, the ridership on the route portion between Owen Sound and Dundalk, I think is significantly impacted by the ability of people to continue on and get to Orangeville and get to the GO station. So if that's the case, is it appropriate for Southgate alone to bear that additional $37,000? Or should it be part of the overall operating cost of the whole system, because it is in fact part of the whole system? So we'll see later on in the staff report, another thing that we're asking to undertake is a sustainability business plan project. I think we'd want to take a little bit of a deeper dive into that, the portion of the route that's Southgate specific versus the whole thing, and be able to bring back some more information to council to consider. Either way, if we return to the base level of service, there will be a levy requirement of $287,500, including fuel surcharges. Otherwise, the number is, as you can see in the report, $602,000. The financial contributions by Bruce County and South Bruce Peninsula are, I think, welcome and enabling the Grey Transit route to maintain the Grey Road 4 service from Walkerton, or from Hanover to Walkerton. And it's noted here that that the ridership on that Route 6 grew by 10% just between May and June. Bruce County and South Bruce Peninsula's financial support are enabling the summer service route on Route 5 to go from Wyerton to Sauble Beach several times a day, and also seeing good ridership there. The numbers have tripled from May and to June. There's weekend service on the southern leg of the service through Shelburne. The town of Shelburne is paying for that weekend service on their own. And so those numbers aren't included here. And the province did extend, as I mentioned earlier, the transportation grant funding timeline through 2025 in recognition of the rocky start that we all had with COVID. One of the unfortunate pieces, though, is that the provincial funding doesn't include any inflation protection. So that $700,000 a year doesn't stretch quite as far as it might have back when we started all of this. We do have an amending agreement with Driver's Seat Owen Sound. They are secure as our provider. No, whether we continue with enhanced service or whether we go back to the base level of service, Driver's Seat has agreed to continue to offer services either way out until 2025. Another exciting development since the report was drafted was that we have been able to confirm that SMART will be undertaking the fully accessible rides as they're required. Earlier on, when Driver's Seat wasn't able to secure fully accessible vehicles for us, it was a lot of work when there was an accessible ride requested for them to ensure that they had an appropriate vehicle. Now that we've been able to make arrangements with SMART on a cost recovery basis for them, so they'll be the ones that'll take those rides for us when they're required. So that's a really a great thing moving forward. And I want to thank Charles Fitzsimmons. Stephanie's backfills on the line, and I really want to acknowledge Charles' leadership in making sure that happened. So I think the rest of the report is fairly self-explanatory. The sustainability project. We are collaborating with Southwest Community Transit Association, the Ontario Public Transit Association, as well as AMO and Roma, to ask the Ministry of Transportation for relief related to fuel costs. We have a confirmed delegation with MTO at AMO to ask specifically both for inflation protection, fuel cost increases, as well as the opportunity to enhance the service with some further support from the province. So as far as next steps go for the service, the GTR will continue to monitor and obtain feedback from riders to make service improvements where we can. With council support, the route will include that 602,500 in the 2023 budget to maintain the days of service, but it is our hope to have the sustainability plan developed. And probably it'll be in the new council's hands, but to have that information for them so that they can make an informed decision about what they want to do when we actually get to looking at budget at the end of January. I mean, I think there are a number of ways to look at this. Some routes are very successful, others less so. As time goes on, perhaps we want to focus on developing the things where we really see a clear business case and a clear demand. I think there are a number of ways to approach this, but a lot depends on whether or not we're able to secure some additional support and resources to continue the service. So I'm happy to take any questions that anybody might have.
Councilor Milne.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and thank you, Kim, for the report. As you indicated, some routes are more successful than others. And it sounds like some of the vehicles are getting close, if not at capacity. So how do you envision increasing that capacity? Is it running more small vehicles or is it fewer bigger vehicles? And if it's the latter, or even the first, there's a timeline to order vehicles, and it can take months, as transportation knows, to get vehicles. So I'm wondering, is that part of the sustainability study as well?
Through you, Mr. Warden. Absolutely, it's part of the study. Adam McKechnie from Driver's Seat has been very much on top of opportunities for us when it comes to vehicles. So, and also working within that Driver's Seat network where there's opportunities for them to work together amongst the franchisees. Sometimes there's opportunities there. I think there's two things that the route that's going to Orangeville is, I think, in a large degree aligned with what the GO schedule is. So I think you would be first and foremost looking for slightly larger vehicles to accommodate rather than more trips, because that might not align with the GO schedule. That's my first thought, but certainly it bears some further scrutiny there.
I do not see other questions. Oh, Councilor Desai.
Thank you, Warden Hicks. One of the parts of this report is with regards to the fuel prices. Is there any consideration for moving forward into having either a hybrid electric vehicle or a fully electric vehicle? And the reason I ask for with a hybrid electric vehicle, you're looking at if a transit vehicle stops often, uses brakes often, so it would actually be not an insane idea to have a hybrid electric vehicle. But also on the fully electric, there is the issue of a very limited range, given how vast we are. But is there any plans moving forward to incorporate hybrid electric vehicles or fully electric vehicles into our fleet? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Warden, I think at the time that we entered into this program, even those 3 years, I think, have made a difference in the availability of product, of the general acceptance of hybrid and electric vehicles of a size that would work for the service that we're trying to provide. I think the other challenge that we face is that this is still a program that has a sunset to it, and asking either the county would need to make a longer term commitment to providing the service, which would then allow us to build a business case for making that capital investment in vehicles, or we would need to make a longer term commitment to our provider to make it work for their business to make those investments. So I think, when we look beyond the immediate deadline of 2025, I think it's certainly at that point that if we decide we're in this game for the longer term, that I think we'd want to look very carefully about that, especially as the costs of fuel have it's a significant bottom line impact to the cost of providing the service.
Thank you, Warden Hicks. Thank you for the response, Kim. I also want to give a shout out to our staff here again for the amazing job that they do with the Great Transit Route, because GTR runs 7 days a week. You can reliably get from Owen Sound to Orangeville every single day of the week, and you can get back. Go Transit from Orangeville down does not run on the weekends. I found that out the hard way because I wanted to go to a TFC game and not drive downtown, and Go Transit would not take me. So thank you very much for that.
If I may, Mr. Warden, Charles, I think is with us. Charles, have I missed anything? Was there any points that I failed to cover that I should have in the report? Oh, he maybe is not there. Oh, there he is.
No, I think the report was very well presented and the questions were very well answered. I'm grateful that I've had the opportunity to fill in for Stephanie during her parental leave, and I'll be wending my way fairly soon. But I must say, as someone who has quite a bit of experience in transit in Ontario, that I think Grey County and its municipal partners are doing a very good job with this experimental service, and nothing is particularly easy about it, but the results are starting to be very exciting. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I do not see any other questions, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Is there anyone opposed? That is carried. Thank you, Kim. Council, I did mention that we would be breaking for lunch, but I'm looking at the agenda, and I think in fairness and maybe as a courtesy to the media in attendance, we should probably deal with the next item and then break for lunch. And that would give the media a break because we'll be going into closed session once we come back from lunch. So Scott, you've got the no? Okay, Jody, we'll turn it to you then.
Thank you, Mr. Warden and members of council.
My apologies, I should put the item on the floor. So moved by Councillor Desai, seconded by Councillor Carlton. Although, oh, no, not voting yet. Jody. Boy, was I speeding that along, huh? Yes. Jody, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Warden and members of council. For a moment there, I thought fortune smiled on me when I was not going to be the last report before lunch, but it was not to be. So I'm here today to present a report broadly that discusses the opportunities and benefits that are presented to us right now for a project to migrate our current document management system to a new platform called SharePoint. So just a little bit of a background. First is just what is an electronic records and document management system for those of you who haven't encountered it before. Basically, it's software that allows an organization to manage the content that it creates, right? And so It allows you to store it, organize it, set permissions on that content, so only the appropriate staff can see it, and control versioning, among other things. Furthermore, it allows staff to manage that content according to the records management procedures that municipalities are obliged to follow. And so for the history of our electronic document and records management systems, prior to 2016, we weren't using one in a traditional sense. We stored our content on a file server, which isn't really a whole lot different than how you would store files on your computer. And that year we implemented a product called Alfresco. It was a very modern platform at the time. It offered a lot of very beneficial features. It had a modern interface. It fully integrated the records and document management components, which not a lot of systems did at the time. And it had powerful workflow and integration tools that allowed us to model certain business processes and integrate that software with a lot of the in-house applications that we build. And we've used that for things like our emergency management portal, our intranet, and of course, the council portal that you use to get your agendas from. That being said, we are now looking at an alternative, like I say, SharePoint. And so although Alfresco was a successful software implementation, we're looking at migrating to SharePoint for a few reasons. First and foremost, we already pay for SharePoint. The way Microsoft sets up its licensing, we have to use Microsoft for things like access or staff access to the network. We use it for email. We use it for security, Windows that runs on your computers. And Microsoft bundles in SharePoint to that package of licensing. We can't take it out. We can't unbundle it. So essentially, we're paying for two competing systems. So that's a pretty clear but big reason we would like to move to the new system. There are also a lot of benefits and opportunities to SharePoint that kind of take it beyond Alfresco, and they're in the report, but I'd just like to highlight a few. It's a far better platform for collaboration on content, especially with people outside of the county. So how we would do something with our current workflows, if you wanted to share a document, it's either you working on it and then you get out and someone else gets in, or if people are outside the organization, you send them the document, they send you back their changes. With SharePoint, you can have two people or more collaborating on a document real time. You basically can send them a link, they can load it up in their browser. It's not that much different than going to see, CBC News. All the content comes up in front of you in your browser and you can edit, you can see what other people are doing. So it's a far better collaboration experience. Aside from that, another benefit, that also makes it a whole lot better for hybrid working. People can get at content, they can use whatever device they want. It kind of eliminates the security risk we have now because you're not transferring files back and forth to different computers or different networks. With the Microsoft 365 licensing that we use, there are a lot of tools for efficiency. They all run on SharePoint. Every time you're creating new content in one of those tools, it's creating content in SharePoint or managing it through SharePoint. And the final one that I wanted to highlight is there are really straightforward tools for developing simple applications that are based on SharePoint site. And again, they allow us to model workflows or integrate with other systems with very little custom code. So from purely an IT service delivery standpoint, there's a pretty big benefit there. In terms of timing of the project, as with any major application that we implement at the county, we have been planning on an assessment of Alfresco for sort of a gap assessment or looking at a potential replacement. And over the past few years, the SharePoint platform has improved dramatically. So all those benefits that I talked about are more recent developments in SharePoint, and they've also reached the point where you can do integrated records management. A few years ago, you would have been using a third-party application to manage records on top of SharePoint. So it would have been two separate pieces of software. We have started to make use of some of these tools, as I mentioned, but for the business benefits, not for content management. So that creates a bit of a challenge for us because we keep going down that road. The eventual migration from Alfresco becomes more complicated because you have to migrate all the data you have in Alfresco, and then you have to deal with this data you've created in sort of the Microsoft world separately. And finally, as I mentioned, the financial benefits, and I'll get into them just a little bit more towards the end of my my talk here. So the scope of the project, we would definitely be seeking consulting services to assist with this. One, for capacity, it's a very large, complex project, but more importantly, just for the expertise. You can do a lot of configuration and customization in SharePoint, so we'd be looking for someone who already has a broad depth of experience in that platform, and ideally someone who's migrated from other systems into SharePoint as well. So the consultant would first help us do the design and configuration, like what should our SharePoint implementation look like? It has to follow what we've done for content organization before to facilitate that migration. We want to follow the TOMRIM system for content organization and records management. And like I said, there's a lot of other things that go on in the background behind SharePoint. So we want to make sure that we've designed it in a way that's efficient and that we can manage going into the future. We would also be relying on a consultant to help us develop the procedures and tools to do records management in SharePoint. So again, it is very configurable, and we'd be looking for new processes essentially and relying on their expertise to help us develop them. The consultant would be ultimately responsible for the migration of Alfresco into SharePoint. That is a significant undertaking of this project because number one, it's just challenging to move all that content from one system into the right spot in the second system, but you also have the complication of a lot of that content is already in the records cycle. So you don't want to take something that has a 10-year record cycle, would be destroyed next year, and then have to start that over pardon me, in a new system. The other big part of this project is just replacing or updating the systems that currently rely on Alfresco, and that would be a component that we handle internally. A few of those we'd be looking for commercial solutions. A few of them are easily replaced with SharePoint sites, and that would be a very efficient way to rebuild them and manage them going into the future. And the remaining, we'd be updating them so they're pulling their content from SharePoint. The last component to this project is, of course, probably the most important is just user adoption and the change management around bringing a project of this scope to the organization. It would be impactful for pretty much anyone who uses a computer in their daily job, which to some degree is all staff. So we'd want to make sure that we've brought them along and provided adequate training ahead of a go live date. So for costing and our recommendations, as outlined in the report, we're estimating that the cost of this project would be around $150,000 for the consulting engagement. As I mentioned, the county currently licenses SharePoint through its Microsoft licensing currently, so there's no additional software costs at present. I will point out that as that system grows, you will have to increase and pay for storage. However, that's about $2,400 a year for 1 terabyte of storage, or to put it another way, our current capacity is just over 4 terabytes. So for 25% more than we're using now, we're looking at $2,400 a year. On the other hand, we are paying slightly over $110,000 a year in licensing for Alfresco. So the cost of this project would be recovered within the second year of implementing, or the second year that we stop licensing Alfresco. So staff are proposing that we release an RFP to seek these services. We're proposing that the funding comes from anticipated surplus in the information services budget. So that wouldn't exceed $60,000 in 2022 to get this project started, really looking at the scope and design of the project. And the remainder of the project would be budgeted in 2023, funded in part from the document management software reserve, which is projected to have a balance of about $104,000 next year. That's the incremental funding that the clerk's department has set aside for the eventual replacement of the document management system. And finally, that staff proceed prior to county council approval as per section 26.6B of the procedural bylaw 5134-22. Any questions?
Questions, anyone? Going once, twice? Jody, thank you for your report. So on the motion before us to receive this report and to proceed with an RPF to seek consulting services, all those in favor? Is there anyone opposed? No, that's carried. Thank you. So we will now break. It's 1:55. I'm going to suggest that we come back at 1:45 to 2. So 1:45. And we'll be going in closed session when we come back. So see you at 1:45 sharp. So we are at, oh, sorry. No, that's correct. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. 1:45.
Lunch is here. You don't have to go get it. Just like right over there.
All right, we are back. Welcome back, everyone. I'm looking for a motion to take us into closed session, and that's for the purposes of a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land, and to get information or advice subject to solicitor-client privilege. Moved by Councillor Keaveney, seconded by Councillor Patterson. Who am I turning it over to? Pat? Oh, sorry. Oh, we should